Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Robert Myers, Senator for District Q these days. If whoever's got the slides could move it back one to the, go another one back. It was the policy statement. I think we're going the wrong direction. Anyway, Mr. Chairman, as we're looking for that real quick here, I was not on the working group, but unfortunately, my time available that summer was not possible. But a lot of what is being discussed, what was discussed by the working group, what's now being discussed by this committee, is why I ran for office. What I got concerned about first as a private citizen, and then once I got into the legislature for the last 6, 8, 10 years now, is I'm very concerned that the legislature is so laser focused on the budget, fixing the budget for this year, fixing the budget for next year, that we're not talking about what does this look like in 10 or 12 years or 20 years, and what does this do to our economy in 10 or 20 years. And effectively, the question that I am trying to ask is not how do we fix our budget. The question I'm trying to ask is it a good idea to fund the vast majority of our state's budget from the permanent fund? Because what that does to us is our government will pay attention to and be dependent on wherever its money is coming from. And what that means is that if we are dependent on oil, our government pays attention to the oil in coming out of our economy. If we are dependent on some other portion of our economy for our government's funds, then our government's going to make sure that that portion of the economy stays healthy. Instead, our government, in moving the direction that we've slowly been going the last 6, 8, 10 years, if our government is going to be dependent upon the revenues coming from the stock market, then we no longer have a government that's accountable to the people of Alaska. We have a government that is going to be paying attention to Wall Street. And I get very concerned about that, Mr. Chair. And Senator Hughes touched on it a little bit, Senator Keel touched on it a little bit, that what happens, really what we need to be concerned about is not just our state budget, but our state's economy. I ran some numbers over the last couple of years. I took a look at the growth of our permanent fund compared to the growth of our economy. And for the 20 years previous to COVID, because COVID doesn't count, I'm not going to use those numbers, our state's economy grew by about 1.5% a year, once you account for inflation. Conversely, our permanent fund grew at 2.7% a year. What happens to our government and what happens to our economy once your government can grow at 50% faster of a rate than your economy can grow? Do you care about resource development? I do. What that tells me is that we'll have enough money coming to our government that we could regulate resource development out of existence in this state, and our state government won't feel the effects. Do you care about small business and people being able to find a future, make a living outside of the government sphere? I do. Senator Keel mentioned it. He was spot on. All of a sudden, any sort of economic development now becomes a cost to government, not a benefit. That's a scary thought, Mr. Chair. And so my message, and I've talked to a couple people on the committee, a couple of other people in the room here, to the committee, to the legislature in general, to the people of Alaska, is let's stop and think not just how are we going to fix our budget, because unfortunately our election cycles make us think no more than 2 years down the line. What we need to think about is what are our actions going to be doing and setting us up for 10 or 20 years down the line. And I see a shortage of that kind of thinking in the legislature, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Senator Myers. I pose the same question to you. Do you think that the Fiscal Policy Working Group report, the recommendations, help alleviate the concern that you've shared tonight?
Mr. Chair, if we don't follow the Fiscal Policy Working Group recommendations, I see us going down a very dark road in Alaska. And it's going to be a place where in 10 years when my kids start graduating high school, I'm going to have to tell them to leave state. If we don't follow the recommendations, or at least something close to what has been mentioned in here, this is not going to be a state that I'm going to want to live in.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it.